Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Social Media Reacts here on ancluiche. This is episode 6 of the series that we started at the beginning of the year, and we are, of course, 6 episodes in. I absolutely love this series. This is a series where I take a look at the tweets from some of the most prominent figures in the GAA, reacting to some action from across the weekend in the GA that I noticed on Twitter when I was refreshing my For You page. So, what we're going to do is dive in, have a look at all the tweets, and see what funny ones were in store. Before I do dive in, this episode is brought to you by Capture Athletics. I have worn their clothing on previous episodes. It is an absolutely deadly sportswear brand. If you need any sportswear, Capture Athletics. They do across combat sports, GAA, football, the whole lot. So make sure you check out at Capture Athletics on Instagram. Thank you so much to the lads for sponsoring this series. So let's dive in with the first tweet. And obviously the main game that jumped out of the weekend was the Division 1 action. But before we do that, we're going to dive in with the LGFA action, which took place over the weekend. Of course, we had round 5 take place across the LGFA divisions, and then Division 4 in the LGFA leagues. We have their final confirmed. It's Fermanagh against Leitrim. Leitrim scored, I think it was 7 goals or something again. They've scored an absolutely outrageous amount of goals in their league campaign so far. I think they scored 10 goals in one game as well. Absolutely ridiculous. But at Division 1 level, there was one player who is leading the way. Amy Mackin, since returning 5 games in. So this tweet is from my good friend Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman. Check this guy out if you don't already. One of the best in the business. He says 5 games in. Here are the top scorers for the little LGFA League Division 1. Amy Mackin is unstoppable at the moment. As you can see there, Mackin is leading the charge in terms of the top scorers from play and also the top scorers altogether. And here's one thing to note is that Amy Mackin comes back in, Armagh get better. Amy Mackin comes back in, all of a sudden Armagh are beating Kerry, Armagh are beating Cork, Armagh are beating Galway, they're beating Waterford. They're winning all their games. They've won 5 from 5, and they are sitting pretty at the top of Division 1. And since she's come back in, Armagh have just gone through the roof. Their victory over Meath as well was a real sit up and take notice, not just because of the victory, but the scoreline. They absolutely, very much so, put me to the sword in that game. And we're going to move on now. There was another massive game which took place over the weekend between Dublin and Derry in the Men's Alliance Football League. Derry, coming into this game, had a 100% win record, 4 wins out of 4, but Dublin put that to right with a brilliant victory. And this is a tweet here from Aaron Prendergast, the man behind Gaelic Games Fan TV, good friend of mine as well. Aaron said here he made the travel up, and he said, another huge win that for Dublin as they see off Derry by 5 points at Celtic Park. Brian Fenton with another top draw display in a Dublin shirt. What a time to be alive. And for the Dubs, it definitely seems like this stage compared to this time last year is night and day. All of a sudden, the performances even in the league are better. We're playing better. There's more confidence. We seem like we know what we're doing a lot more as well. We're attacking more. We're going for teams when we have them. And some of the attacking play against Derry was brilliant. We have a tweet in here from Maurice Brosnan talking about the game. He says, Brian Fenton has played every single game, league and championship, under Desi Farrell. In 53 games, he has missed about 15 minutes. When he plays well, Dublin win. A colossus. I mean, puts it very well there, Maurice Brosnan. Like, it's genuinely staggering how good Brian Fenton is. And he's one of those that he's been so consistently good ever since he broke onto the scene for Dublin that sometimes you forget just how good he is. The guy is one of the greatest Gaelic footballers to ever play the sport. Like, that's just as simple as that. From when he joined the Dublin team in 2015, it took him until 2021 to lose a championship game. Do you know how absurd that is? And then not only did he go on that run as a key beating heart in that midfield, he picked up 2 Footballer of the Years award along that journey, one in 2018, one in 2020. He was up for Footballer of the Year last year as well. The guy is just world class. And in all of Dublin's games last season, in the last 10 minutes, Brian Fenton stepped up when Dublin needed a leader, when Dublin needed somebody to pull them in the right direction. Brian Fenton was always the guy to turn to. We have another tweet in here about that game. So this one is from Caro Kane. He says, Shane McGuigan's highlight reel from Derry's game with Dublin this evening is sublime. Clearly the Oak Leafers' best forward since Paddy Bradley. Where does he stand in the list of Derry's all-time sharpshooters? His last 2 years have been of the absolute highest order. I think he's better than Paddy Bradley. I think he's genuinely unbelievable. And that's not even a disrespect to Paddy Bradley. I just think Shane McGuigan is that good. the fella is just so consistent. And some of the scores he was kicking against Dublin were out of this world. And I was saying I think I was talking about it with John McMahon, who was on the podcast, the JMac podcast. Big shout out to him as well. Go follow him if you don't. Is we were talking about why does Clifford get so much more fanfare about his scores when actually McGuigan is putting up similar numbers. And we were saying because Clifford, the style at which Clifford fires the ball so high into the clouds and then puts it over the bar, whereas McGuigan is more just kind of consistent, robotic, over, always from inside the D. Clifford has a very trademark style of doing things. His point, like his winner against Mayo, was, vintage Clifford. It's just like, but then McGuigan is incorporating that more into his game. He kicked 2 or 3 particular scores against Dublin where I was like, wow, that is absolutely outrageous that he's fired the ball over from there. And the thing is, throughout this game, you knew it was 2 of the best teams in the country, as put by this tweet by Kevin Cassidy. Would love to see these 2 clash later on in the championship. Like, it's just, Kevin Cassidy was watching the game there, says he couldn't wait to watch them potentially lock horns down the line in the championship. Like the thought of them meeting each other in a league final again in Division 1 in Croke Park, or in an All-Ireland final or an All-Ireland semi-final, just be absolutely sensational. I don't think Dublin have played Derry in the championship since 2007. I could be incorrect about that. That's just off the top of my head. And I remember that game because I remember Dublin won by a goal and Stephen Cluxon made an outrageous save from Owen Bradley. But I think that might be the last time Dublin have played Derry in the championship. We played them in the league a few times, but Dublin and Derry rarely cross paths. And now they are 2 of the best 3 teams, in my opinion, in the country, along with Kerry. So it's going to be very, very interesting. They might clash again. Mayo also got a victory over the weekend against Roscommon, and we have a tweet in here from Eamon McGee. He's seen something in the Mayo-Roscommon game that particularly annoyed him. Let's take a look at this. He says, nothing annoys me more than forwards putting in these pathetic tackles. Automatic substitution. And that is it. Like, when you look at these teams, it starts with, lazy tackles going in further up the field. You look at managers coming in like a Jim McGuinness, like a Mickey Hart, and Kieran McGeeney, and any new manager that comes in. Pat Gilroy with Dublin. The first thing Pat Gilroy did with Dublin was make sure that if you were in that full forward line, you were working just as hard as the midfielders and the halfbacks and everything. You were working like a dog, especially when Dublin didn't have the ball. And that attitude that if you don't have the ball and you're in the full forward line, you're actually the first line of defence. Like, that attitude is so unanimous across the board now that you would wonder how there's still lazy tackles going in at inter-county level. But it's no surprise to see that annoys Eamon McGee, and then he was a key part of Jim McGuinness's success at Donegal in the initial period, and it's going to be interesting to see if he does carry on that success later on into the year. Obviously, as well, we were mentioning Kerry against Tyrone happened as well. Kerry got a big win, and David Clifford initiated a bit of a brawl, believe it or not. Colin Parkinson tweeted about it here. He said, I'm a bit behind as I was eating the dinner. How did Clifford get away with that judo throw? Exactly. Like, if we're talking here, that's a stonewall black card. Like, am I wrong here? That's a stonewall black card. Like, the rule of the black card is to deliberately take someone down, deliberately take an opponent down. David Clifford judo threw Con Kilpatrick. So explain to me how that isn't deliberately taking him down. I get that it's David Clifford and he's the golden boy, but why on earth is that not taking someone down? So, look, he's an absolutely outstanding footballer. There's no question about it. But that doesn't exempt you from when you started in Melee. And he did start in Melee. Tyrone players absolutely didn't blink, and they responded straight back to it. But without Clifford, that brawl doesn't happen. But yeah, it's interesting. And look, personally, I think there's a very easy route out of this for the GAA, which is to do what rugby do, which is they sit down and they referee the game again. So once they referee the game, they go home, they watch it again, or someone else watches the game. And if they see something that's a red card offence, or if they see something that's a black card offence, and that in some way impacts the season, then it's given. Because how many times do we see clenched fist tackles, really high tackles that probably deserve a red card, but they got away with it? Well, then what if they didn't? And it just would eliminate it a little bit from the GAA, because people would think, oh, I probably won't get away with that. Even if the referee doesn't see it, if a camera picks it up, I'm in trouble. So it definitely is something for the GAA to consider. And I get that it would potentially lead to a VAR situation where you wouldn't want the game going too soft and penalising every single hard tackle. But it is something to consider when it's, in my opinion, the David Clifford on Con Kilpatrick was a stonewall black card because he deliberately took him to the ground. I don't know. I'd be interested to have your opinions about it in the comments below. Make sure to put them in the comments down below. One more as well. We have here from Conan Doherty. He says, Donegal, Derry, Tyrone, Monaghan, Armagh are all going to be guaranteed their place in the All-Ireland series, whatever happens. Ulster means very, very little to the All-Ireland now, and they're still going to hammer the shit out of each other, and I'll still be there no matter what. And that's why we love the Ulster Championship. Like, Leinster Championship has been so predictable ever since, 2011, 2012, when Dublin got their claws back into it, shall we say, when Kildare kind of fell off, that Kieran McGeeney era kind of came to an end. Since then, it's been plain sailing for Dublin. They've never been in threat, in bother in the Leinster Championship since. Whereas you look at the Ulster Championship, my God, like, it is an absolute war zone. Tyrone, Monaghan, Donegal, Armagh, Derry, Down on the rise, Cavan on the rise, Fermanagh on the rise, Antrim on the rise as well under Andy McEntee. They started off Division 3 great. There is no easy game in the Ulster Championship, and it, in my opinion, is the provincial championship that is keeping the provincial championships where they are and keeping them where they are alive. Now, we'll move on to the next tweet in here. So Cork got a big, big win there, as you can see as well. Matthew Hurley says, Chris O'Jones having a storming season so far. To add to his Division 2 scoring tally, he scored 2-7 in the McGrath Cup and scored 116 for his club in the Cork Club Championship. So that's 436 from play in 12 games. He is in absolutely outstanding form. And the one thing as well, a key stat that Matthew pointed out was how many turnovers Cork had in Kildare's half in the second half, as Cork got that vital win over the Lily Whites, versus how many turnovers Kildare had in Cork's half during that second half period, where Cork came from being 5 behind to blowing them away at the end of the first half and the second half as well. And you have one more point in here from Colin Parkinson here. Smaller Fish GA says 6 points more of a reflection on the game. Dublin not remotely afraid of Derry's defensive system, even sitting so deep, actually hand passing through them. Eye of a needle stuff. And like, to be honest, Dublin were never afraid. Dublin have figured out that defensive system, I'd say, as far back as 2017, when Tyrone came to Croke Park, set up their defensive system, and Dublin ate them alive. Like, that, in my opinion, was the day where Dublin figured it out. And it's carried on into the present day. So look, while Derry have their defensive system, that system is not going to be enough to beat Dublin and Croke Park. And you can argue it. I think playing more like they played against Kerry in last year's All-Ireland semi-final, where they have a bit more grit and they go for it a bit more, would actually suit them better, because it's Mickey Hart as well. It's the guy who was the manager of Tyrone when Dublin tore them apart in Croke Park with that defensive system. So Mickey better have changed, because if they get Dublin in an All-Ireland final and Dublin have the likes of Conor O'Callaghan in the form of his life, they have to come with something different. And look, I personally think that they will, and I think that it's going to be an absolutely blinding contest when they meet each other. I think they'll probably meet each other in the league final, so keep an eye out for that. It was a game that Dublin won fairly easy last year. I wouldn't be so confident that it will be the same this time around. So guys, that is the tweets that I've selected to run through for this week's episode of Social Media Reacts, episode 6. Once again, reminding you, this episode was brought to you by Capture Athletics. Go check them out on Instagram at Capture Athletics if you haven't already. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It's been my pleasure again, as always. Until the next episode, until the weekend preview, which will be soon on Cluiche, make sure you check that out. Take care.